Welcome to Audiobook 365 Stories.
The Blue Light Drugstore is in the busy part of town, not far from two streets called the Bowery and First Avenue. It's different from other drugstores. They don't just sell candy and soda. If you need medicine, they won't give you something sweet. At the Blue Light, they don't use modern shortcuts. They make their own medicine from plants like opium. They even make pills right there in the store. The store is always busy with kids playing outside, hoping to get some cough drops or syrup. Icky Schoenstein works as a night clerk at the Blue Light. He's friends with everyone who comes in. On the east side, where the Blue Light is, the people trust the pharmacist like a wise friend. Icky is well known around there. He lives nearby with Mrs. Riddle and her daughter, Rosie. Icky really likes Rosie, but he's too shy to tell her. At work, he feels confident and smart, but outside he feels clumsy and unsure. The problem for Icky is Chunk McGowan. Chunk also likes Rosie and often visits the drugstore. One day, he comes in and asks Icky for some medicine. Icky looked at Chunk, trying to see if he looked hurt, but he didn't seem to be. "Take off your coat," he said. "I can see you got hit near your ribs. I've told you before, those guys would hurt you." Chunk smiled. "No, not them," he said. "But you're right about where I got hit. Hey, Icky, Rosie and I are planning to run away and get married tonight." Icky's finger was on the edge of the mortar, keeping it steady. He hit it with the pestle by mistake, but didn't feel it. Meanwhile, Chunk's smile disappeared, and he looked worried. "Yeah, if she doesn't change her mind again," Chunk said. "We've been planning this for 2 weeks. She said yes this time, but it's still 5 hours till then, and I'm worried she'll say no when the time comes." "But why are you talking about medicine then?" asked Icky. Chunk looked uncomfortable. He wrapped a paper around his finger. "I really want this to work," he said. "I've got everything ready. A nice place in Harlem with flowers and a preacher waiting for us at 9:30. If Rosie backs out again, I don't see how I can help with that," Icky said shortly. Chunk continued, trying to explain. "Rosie's dad doesn't like me," he said. "He won't let her see me. If it wasn't for losing a tenant, he would have kicked me out by now. But I make $20 a week, and she won't regret leaving with me." "Sorry, Chunk," said Icky. "I have to make a medicine for someone." "Hey, Icky," said Chunk suddenly, "isn't there a medicine that can make a girl like you more?" Icky looked at Chunk with a mix of disbelief and amusement, but Chunk kept talking. "Tim Lacey told me he got some from a doctor uptown and gave them to his girlfriend in a drink. After the first sip, she thought he was the best thing ever, and they got married in less than 2 weeks." Chunk was straightforward and simple. Anyone could see he was determined, like a general planning a battle, making sure he covered every angle to succeed. "I thought," Chunk said hopefully, "if I gave Rosie one of those powders during dinner tonight, it might help her feel more sure about running away with me. She doesn't need much convincing. but sometimes people need a little push. If it works for a couple of hours, it'll be enough. When are you planning to run away? Asked Icky. 9 o'clock, said Chunk. Dinner's at 7. At 8, Rosie says she's going to bed with a headache. At 9, I'll sneak into the backyard through Parvenzano's place next door. I'll help Rosie climb down the fire escape. We need to do it early because the preacher's waiting. It's easy as pie if Rosie doesn't change her mind. Can you give me one of those powders, Icky? Icky rubbed his nose slowly. Chunk, he said, pharmacists need to be very careful with drugs like that. But I trust you, so I'll make it for you. You'll see how it helps Rosie feel about you. Icky went behind the counter and crushed 2 small tablets into powder. Each one contained a little bit of a strong medicine called morphia. He added some sugar to make it easier to take, then wrapped it in paper. If an adult took this powder, they would sleep deeply for a few hours without any harm. He gave it to Chunk and told him to mix it in a drink if he could. Chunk thanked him warmly. Later, Icky told Rosie's dad about Chunk's plan to run away with her. Rosie's dad, a tough-looking man, thanked Icky and said he would wait for Chunk with a gun. He was angry at Chunk for trying to take Rosie. With Rosie fast asleep from the medicine and her dad ready to stop Chunk, Icky felt like Chunk was about to have a big problem. All night, Icky waited at the drugstore, expecting to hear bad news, but nothing happened. At 8 in the morning, the new clerk arrived at the store, and Icky rushed to Mrs. Riddle's house to find out what happened. And guess who he bumped into as soon as he left the store? It was Chunk McGowan, jumping off a passing streetcar and grabbing Icky's hand with a big smile on his face. We did it, Chunk said happily. Rosie made it down the fire escape right on time, and we got to the preacher's house at exactly 9:30. She's at the apartment now. She even cooked eggs this morning in her blue robe. I'm so lucky. You have to come over for dinner sometime, Icky. I've got a job near the bridge, and that's where I'm off to now. What about the powder? Stammered Icky. Oh, that stuff you gave me, Chunk said, his grin getting wider. Well, here's what happened. Last night at dinner at the Riddles, I looked at Rosie and thought, Chunk, if you want to be with her, you have to be honest. So, I kept the paper with the powder in my pocket. Then I noticed someone else at the table who I thought didn't like me much, so I seized the moment and put the powder in Old Man Riddle's coffee. Get it?